Hello guys, and welcome back to our channel. Now I welcome you to a very interesting conversation about the Moors, a people who have been shrouded in mystery and misconception for far too long. Now as we explore the history and legacy of the Moors, we will hear from different people who will challenge what we thought we knew, our assumptions, and reveal the truth about this incredible civilization. From a lady who shares the origins of the Moors to the gentleman who exposes the secret of the Moors' contributions to modern-day Europe and America, we will take a look into the rich history of the Moors. Now we'll learn about how the Moors, who originated in northern Africa, conquered and influenced lands across the Mediterranean, leaving an indelible mark on the cultures and societies they touched. But we'll also explore the ways in which the Moors have been erased from history and how their legacy has been distorted and suppressed. We'll hear about how the term Moors was applied to people of dark, brown, and reddish-brown skin who were indigenous to Europe, West Africa, and North Africa. So with that said, let's take a look at these videos as different people share what they know about this. I will be right back.
Started in Rome, Italy. That's why they, like I said in my original video, I've had this argument with people before. I don't know why it's so difficult for people to grasp. Maybe it's because of our Americanized thinking of black and white. Like I said, hold up, I'm gonna break it down for you, okay? The original Moors were from Africa. But have you ever heard of the Romans? Of course you have. The Romans started in Rome, Italy. That's why they were named the Romans. Now, when they went out and conquered other lands and became dominant over the indigenous people, the lands they conquered, those people became Romans also. So all the Romans, even though the Romans started in Rome, all the Romans of different lands that were underneath the Roman rule were of different ethnicities. It's the same thing with the Moors. The Moors originated in northern Africa, and they went out and conquered other lands. So those people of the other lands ended up being Moors too. Just in case, you wasn't understanding what I was trying to say. You see, Rome stretched all the way from England to Egypt and in between the Mediterranean basin. All those different people had all different skin tones, but they were all Romans. This is what Google says. The Moors initially were indigenous Berbers, okay? The name was later applied to Arabs and Arab countries. Pay attention to that picture at the top that shows a Moor. I'm explaining where the origins of that comes from. And what does this say? They were an ethnic group indigenous to North Africa, okay? But getting back to this painting of a Moor, it was done by a Dutch artist that was born in 1575 in the 1600s. Dutch. By American standards, that would be considered white, right? Well, you see, he wasn't an American, so he didn't have to whitewash the history. This was a portrait of a Moor that he did. The same man, same artist, Dutch artist, his name was Jan something, did a portrait of this Moor. And when you Google the original Berbers, this is the map that comes up, Northern Africa. Now, reading from your name, I can assume you're Sicilian, and I don't know what you were taught in your family history or your lineage. I don't understand why it's so difficult for people to grasp the concept that there were Africans that conquered lands too. And the reason why this is left out of a lot of American history is because during colonial slavery and still colonial slavery mentality that this country is built upon, that's still used today, didn't want slaves to know that once they were conquerors and powerful people as well. Just like the Roman Emperor Severus, that was an African that has literally been depicted as white, and he wasn't. Have a nice day.
Have you heard of the Moors? No? What if I told you that they are responsible for making Europe and America what they are today? Except they don't want you to know that. See, the Moors ruled most of the Iberian Peninsula for the 8th century, and they brought things like mathematics, sciences, architecture, agriculture, art, science, basically everything that we consider modern-day Europe. But that's supposed to be a secret. They are actually the ones that are responsible for bringing Europe out of the Dark Ages and into the Renaissance. But again, you're not supposed to know that. Meanwhile, while the Christian Europe had an illiteracy rate of 99% and 0 universities and 0 libraries, Moors, they had 17 universities in 7 cities and over 70 libraries. And then they introduced their education system to Europe. There was a man called Ziryab. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but he was a Moor. And he actually pioneered changing clothes based on the season. That's how dumb Europeans were at the time. They didn't even... What? They also invented deodorant, daily bathing, and invented toothpaste. Like, no wonder the Black Plague destroyed Europe. They were filthy. The Yab also introduced a 3-course meal: soup, main course, dessert, and the Moors, they even introduced crops that are still prominent in Spain today. Moorish cities also had streetlights, hospitals, and running water, and streetlights and paved streets weren't even introduced in London and Paris for another couple hundred years. Moors are also the ones that built the aqueducts that brought running water from the mountains down to the cities, which gave Europe running water. The father of modern surgery was also a Moor named Al-Zawrawi. Don't know if I'm saying that right either, I'm sorry. He developed innovative and precise surgical equipment and the premier textbook of Western medical training. Oh, and I bet you thought that the Wright brothers were the ones that are responsible for inventing flight. Nope. Fernaz, again, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, but he was the first one to actually attempt flight scientifically, and he was actually successful. The only thing he wasn't successful on was the landing. And those are just a few of the ways that the Moorish people completely changed Europe. But again, they don't want you to know that.
We know the truth now here. Let's get into it. Indian of the Western Hemisphere. In 1676, the native races of New England were spoken of indifferently as Indians and Moors. And our British Indians are also remembered as Moors. Let's keep going. The term Moor was applied to dark-skinned, brown-skinned, and reddish-brown-skinned people who were not only indigenous to Europe, but to West and North Africa. Even black Indians of the Western Hemisphere were also dubbed with the title. Colonizers called everybody with dark skin, brown skin, and reddish brown skin a Moor. That does not make indigenous Americans Moors. That term came from Europe and Africa. That term has nothing to do with indigenous Americans. But they called it Moor because that is a derogatory term for black people, brown skinned people, light brown skin, reddish brown skinned people. That does not make you a Moor. That is a colonizer's term from Europe. That's what they call dark-skinned people of Europe. So when they got here, they brought their terminology here and called indigenous Americans Moors. We know the truth now.
That's why when you look on the back of the dollar bill, you see there's 2 seals here. This is the only nation with a 2-sided seal. This seal you see here with the pyramid is the seal of our ancestors and our federal government that we have set up in here in this hemisphere going way back. This is the seal of the 6 European tribes that we allowed to set up here. That is why above our seal says Annuit Coeptus. He had favored our undertaking. I mean, it was our federal government here that was already established, what they call Iroquois Confederacy, so on and so forth, was already established, that taught them the science of government and allowed them to set up here. And here you see this flag has 6 white stripes and 7 red. And the elders taught us that those 6 white stripes stands for the British, the Irish, the Scottish, the French, the Dutch, and the German. The 6 European tribes that we allowed to set up here. And all they had initially was the eastern seaboard. The rest was ours. The elders also taught us some things. Now, I know this is going to sound crazy, but do the research and you're going to be surprised at what you find. The elders taught us that the original now was here. Old man Mississippi, the Missouri being the blue and the Ohio being the white. Until this day, where them two come together, there's a city there called Cairo to this day. And that area is called Little Egypt. Then you go down into what the elders taught us with Alabama and so on and so forth being Lower Egypt. Then you get into Memphis, Tennessee, the Memphite theology. Kentucky, King Tut. And then you start to look a little further, and then you find out that there was an archaeological cover-up involving the Smithsonian Institute, where they found thousands and thousands of artifacts. They found artifacts showing human beings contemporary with dinosaurs. A lot of this information they put on ships and dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. Some of it they got still in hidden chambers that they say you can't go in there because it got asbestos and it's unsafe. There's a part of the Grand Canyon where they have all Egyptian names, Tet, Osiris, Isis, and they got that part blocked off. They said it's too dangerous for the people to go there. To this day, this exists.
America is the land of the Moors. In 1845, a congressman referred to Mexico as belonging to the Mauritanian races and the Moorish people. Here's the source, so you can see it for yourself. On page number 8, you can see where they specifically mention the Moors. Here's another reference. Starting on page 374, you see that when the Englishmen came to the Americas, they indifferently referred to the natives as Indians and, on page 375, Moors. But wait, let's go back to when the congressman was talking about Mexico. It's not the borders of Mexico today. This is the map prior to the end of the Mexican War in 1848, and you'll see that all of the West Coast was Mexican. But then that raises the question, what about the East Coast? Well, here down below you see the Delaware Code, Title 29, subsection 106. The Lenape Indian tribe of Delaware was formerly known as the Moors. And here's that same information from the Delaware Code from their own website. And as you see at the bottom, it says delcode.delaware.gov, meaning .gov. Now, the Delaware government admitting that the Lenape Indians are Moors is very important, and it was clearly articulated in this book right here. Is looking to the fact that the United States didn't exist until 1774, so you'd have to look in the diplomatic intercourse and correspondence between the parent colonist countries and the Sultan of Morocco. Which brings us to this point right here, that when the Dutch entered into trade agreements, the Dutch fur trade, with the Lenape Indians, who we know that they're Moors, they first entered into a treaty with the Sultan of Morocco. And here's the treaty right here, which allowed the Dutch to have free trade in Morocco. They disguise it as a Lenape Indian treaty, but notice how the Delaware government admitted that the Lenapes are who? Moors. We can also see in this book right here that this portrait, this German portrait or Dutch portrait of a Moorish king could easily be an American Indian ruler. Another reference point is from the state of Illinois, House Resolution 0689, whereas the government of Illinois admits that Moorish people are indigenous to the Americas and Moorish peoples are aboriginal to the Americas, both North, South, and Central America. The state of Georgia admitted the same thing in their House Resolution 1203. And as you see, the link down below is Georgia's official government website. It says legis.ga.gov, and they said, whereas the Moorish Americans are aboriginal to the territories of North, Central, and South America. And as we can see from this book right here, Morocco as it is, published in 1839, there's a Sultan of America. And as we can see here, the word Morocco is derived from Medikesh, which is derived from the Berber word Ameruk, which from Ameruk we can see and hear America, America, which means America is not derived from an Italian man named Amerigo, when the Berber word is 1,800 years older than Amerigo.
Now, according to research, if the term Moor seems familiar but confusing, there's a reason. Though the term can be found throughout literature, art, and history books, it does not actually describe a specific ethnicity or race. Instead, the concept of Moors has been used to describe alternatively the reign of Muslims in Spain, Europeans of African descent, and others for centuries. Now, derived from the Latin word moras, the term was originally used to describe Berbers and ethnic groups from the ancient Roman province of Mauritania in what is now North Africa. Over time, it was increasingly applied to Muslims living in Europe. Now, beginning in the Renaissance, Moor and Blackamoor were also used to describe any person with dark skin. In AD 711, a group of North African Muslims led by the Berber general captured the Iberian Peninsula, modern Spain and Portugal. Known as the Al-Adalas, the territory became a prosperous cultural and economic center where education and the arts and sciences flourished. Now, over time, the strength of the Muslim state diminished, creating inroads for Christians who resented Moorish rule. For centuries, Christian groups challenged Muslim territorial dominance in Al-Adalas and slowly expanded their territory. Now, this culminated in 1492 when Catholic monarchs Ferdinand II and Isabella I won the Granada War and completed Spain's conquest of the Iberian Peninsula. Eventually, the Moors were expelled from Spain. By then, the idea of Moors had spread across Western Europe. Moor came to mean anyone who was Muslim or had dark skin. Occasionally, Europeans would distinguish between Blacker Moors and Pamkala Moors. Now, one of the most famous mentions of Moors is in Shakespeare's play, The Tragedy of Othello, the Moor of Venice. Its titular character is a Moor who serves as a general in the Venetian army. In Shakespeare's time, the port city of Venice was ethnically diverse, and the Moors represented a growing interchange between Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Africa. Despite his military prowess, Othello is also portrayed as exotic, hyper-esso, and untrustworthy, a lascivious Moor who secretly marries a Pamkala woman, reflecting historic stereotypes of black people. Now, more recently, the term has been co-opted by the sovereign citizen movement in the United States. Members of Moorish sovereign citizen groups claim they are descended from Moors who predated Pamkala settlers in North America, and that they are part of a sovereign nation and not subject to U.S. laws. It's proof of the ongoing allure of Moor as a seemingly legitimate ethnic designation, even though its meaning has never been clear. Now, Moors from North Africa helped the first Islamic empire invade Iberia in 711. Once Al-Andalus was established, more and more Moors migrated to Iberia and lived there for almost 800 years. While they controlled a majority of the peninsula, they still permitted people to follow Christianity or Judaism if they paid a tax. Now, the Moors were pushed out of Iberia completely during the Reconquista in 1492, and Morocco has remained the center of Moors ever since. This is a unique ethnic group who are primarily Muslim and live in North Africa. Even some Americans trace their ancestry back to the Moors too. Now, the Moors originally came from North Africa. However, once Iberia was captured, thousands moved there and left a lasting impact. They spread their technology, crops, and other innovations to the region. Moors is a term generally used by Europeans to describe the Muslim people of North Africa and the Iberian Peninsula during the Middle Ages. Between 711 CE and 1492 CE, Muslim people of African descent controlled parts of Iberia, which consist of modern-day Spain and Portugal. Because they were there so long, they had a long-lasting impact on Spanish culture as well as the European relationship with Islam. Now, Moorish buildings have influenced architects around the world. The Spanish language has countless words of Arabic origin, and Moorish characters were included in European literature for centuries. This term typically refers to this historic group of people, and their culture lives on in North African countries like Morocco. However, Europeans tended to use the word Moor in a broader sense to denote simply anyone who was Muslim. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but as I was doing my research on the Moors, I couldn't help but notice a glaring discrepancy between the information available on Google and the revelations shared by the speakers in the videos. It's as if there's a deliberate attempt to conceal the truth about the Moors and their contributions to human civilization. When you search for information on the Moors on Google, you're likely to find a sanitized version of history that barely scratches the surface of their achievements and influence. You might find some basic information about their origins, their conquests, and their cultural practices, but you won't find much about their groundbreaking contributions to science, mathematics, architecture, and art. It's almost as if there's a veil of secrecy surrounding the Moors, a deliberate attempt to erase their legacy from history. And then I remembered what one of the speakers said in the video. They don't want you to know. It's a chilling phrase that suggests a concerted effort to suppress the truth about the Moors and their impact on the world. It's not hard to imagine why this might be the case. The Moors were powerful and influential people who challenged dominant narratives of their time. They were a testament to the ingenuity, creativity, and resilience of African people. And their achievements threatened to append the archaicist and Eurocentric views of history that have been perpetrated for centuries. Now, by erasing the Moors from history, those in power can maintain their grip on the narrative and continue to perpetuate the myth of Pamkala supremacy. But the truth is out there, and it's up for us to seek it out and share it with the world. We have finally come to the end of the video, but what do you, our viewers, have to say? Share your thoughts, your views, your contributions, and what you know about the Moors. in the comment section and let's have a conversation. Thank you for always watching and see you in our next video as we bring you another interesting video.